In this episode, you're going to learn about GRC and GRC careers, as well as the importance of GRC or governance, risk, and compliance from Christabel Thomas, who's a world renowned expert in GRC and also runs a consulting firm as well. So, without further ado, let's jump right in and chat with Christabel. So, welcome, Christabel. So, I wanted to just kind of dive into it. You work as a GRC analyst right now, you've got your own consulting firm. When someone's looking at, well, first off, what's a GRC analyst? Like, what is GRC? What are some of the like the job titles? Somebody that's kind of entry level looking to go down this path. Like, what might they see out there? Because everything's probably they probably don't even know what GRC stands for, but it sounds exciting because they're seeing it on Ken's show. So, like, what is it, and what are some of like the job titles if they're going to LinkedIn or something right now? What should they be searching for?
Definitely you can. So they want to be looking out for some of the job titles they will say GRC. So that's governance, risk, compliance. Some of them will say audit. So an internal auditor. Those are some names that you could find on job titles. You could also see compliance analyst. You could see risk assessment or risk analyst, third-party risk manager, third-party risk specialists. There's a couple of them that you could see. You could also see, I know that I have seen security awareness specialist. There's just a couple roles that you could see in governance, risk, and compliance.
So, if do I need technical skills, or could I be somebody that if I'm not technical, would this be kind of a good path for me to at least get my start in, even if I get those skills maybe later on?
You know what? When for someone who doesn't have a technical background, so for non-technical backgrounds, GRC is one of those segments of cybersecurity that you can easily transition into. And why is that? Because GRC is more so not so much the technical side of security. It's more so, think of it this way, like the communicational aspect. I like to think of GRC as that middleman, that intersection between the technical security and the business side of the organization. And so if you have a non-technical background, GRC is definitely a great segue for you to get into cybersecurity, or for you to definitely pursue GRC.
So, do I need like certs or college degrees or all that good stuff that people try to sell me on, or can I just kind of learn on my own a little bit and get that very first job?
Well, certifications are great. I would definitely, you know what, I don't wanna pick one over the other. I think that you could do, you know, you could go either ways, right? Cybersecurity is a role where it's a job where you keep learning. You never stop learning. So whether you want to get certifications or you want to learn on your own, you can do that. I would definitely go down the route of getting a certification. And for myself, so a little about my background, I started off in fraud prevention at the bank, and then I worked my way into risk and then cybersecurity, GRC. And when I made that switch, it was very important for me to get technical certifications, even though I didn't want to be in a technical role, because I wanted to have these conversations and understand these conversations with the technical team, right? Because as I said, GRC, governance, risk, compliance, is a role where you will be communicating what cybersecurity is to business executives. And if you don't have a great solid understanding or foundational understanding of what networks are, or what ports are, what open ports, closed ports, network segmentation, pen testing, like understanding what it is, finding a vulnerability, how to read a pen test report. Like those things do come back even in a GRC role, right? So it's wonderful for you to have those technical backgrounds. And so for me, what I did and why I definitely recommend going for a certification, I did the GSEC and GCI certification from SANS. And honestly, that really changed everything for me, because I went from being in rooms with technical teams and not understanding what exactly those conversations were about, to understanding what those conversations were about. And it definitely changed everything for me. So I would recommend certifications like CompTIA, Security Plus, GSEC, GFACT. There's a GFACT that just came out with SANS, and those are great foundational certifications to go after. I know for some people, it's all about them wanting the certifications, but some of the certifications are so expensive. Like for GSEC, GCI, just certifications, for one certification is almost $10,000. But there's good news. There's a lot of immersion program that you could go through. And if you're selected, you could get the certifications for free, right? And if you wanted more information about that, definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Christabel Thomas on LinkedIn. So that's Christ and Abel, one word. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would definitely love to share those resources with you. And I know, Ken, you've asked about going about this your own way. So if you wanted to do that, you could also do that. And then there's so many free resources that you could use. There are boot camps. I know boot camps aren't free, but there are boot camps. SANS has a lot of free resources. They have a lot of free training. They have a lot of free open source tools that you could take advantage of. You could set up your own home lab at home, and you could test and do your own, weird stuff. For GRC, again, which is what I'm in. So there's Simply Cyber by Jerry Odger. Is also a very good resource. Verminder for third-party risk management. So if you wanted to get into third-party risk management, you can check out Verminder, Visotrust. They have a lot of free webinars that you could join and get to learn that way. But then again, I would always recommend getting a certification, building that foundational knowledge of what cybersecurity is.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. So let's say that I'm working at McDonald's right now and I'm watching this video. Like, what would let's just say, what would you do in the next 30 days to, not necessarily guarantee like you're going to get a job in GRC, but like what would your path be in the next 30 days? Like, what would you kind of study or focus on? And let's say that you got limited funds, so you can't do the SANS, because we all know they, like you said, they charge a ridiculous amount. So you got limited funds. You really want to try to position yourself best. Like, what would you do in the next 30 days?
That's a great question, Ken. So working at McDonald's in the next 30 days, and I have 30 days to break into cybersecurity. It sounds like a fairy tale, but it's possible. Listen, it's possible. So you know what? The very first thing is always there's just someone that knows something that you don't know, and you just need to make the connection with that person to get what you want, right? And so that's why, you take advantage of LinkedIn. Like, LinkedIn is a great resource. Reach out to someone who is in the field you want to be in, or reach out to a hiring manager. Reach out to hiring managers. Don't just reach out to one. And reach out to every single person you can reach out to. Ask for help, ask for advice, ask for what you need to do. And who knows, you might just land yourself an internship, you might land yourself an apprenticeship, you might land yourself some headway, some doorway into cybersecurity. You never know. But I would definitely say that in 30 days, if you're looking to get like a GRC role from McDonald's, the first thing to do is to take advantage of LinkedIn. Reach out to hiring managers, let them know what you're looking to do, let them know like be enthusiastic, like show that eagerness, that ambition, and someone will definitely take a chance on you. I don't want to guarantee that, but I know that there are a lot of people who are very helpful, very kind, and you just never know. You just have to try first.
So what do you like the most about GRC? You've kind of worked for a number of years in it. Like what's I guess the way to say it is like, what's the coolest thing of your job?
I love GRC. I really, really love GRC. So growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer, right? And a big reason why was because I wanted to protect people. I wanted to be the voice for a lot of people that didn't have a voice, that couldn't speak up. And um, and so that, GRC, as I said, governance, risk, compliance, and then privacy. Those roles are just closely tied to law, to protecting people, to regulations, putting laws in place, putting policies in place, speaking up for people, being the voice of people who can't speak up, right? And in this role, I get to do exactly what I've always wanted to do, what I love. And that is being the intersection of the technical and the rest of the organization. So I'm translating what cybersecurity is to the executives, to the rest of the organization. I mean, just the other day, I was giving a briefing to the organization and telling them, giving some feedback on some threats. And an executive asked me a question. And being able to break what cybersecurity is down to like as if you're explaining to a 5-year-old, that's a skill, right? And I love that because you get to really tap into those communication skills and a lot of okay, I shouldn't say this, but I love that you get that, there's a lot of communication, it's front facing, you get to build rapport with everyone, with, human capital team, the human resource team, the product team, the marketing team. And so for me, those are the things about GRC that I love. I also love the fact that to be successful in GRC, you really have to understand what the purpose of the business is. Like, why does the business exist? And you want to make policies, systems, processes that help the business do what it is that they want to do, right? And so because I have a business background, I came up in a family business. My bachelor's was in business and economics. And so the ability to understand the business model and also translate it and make sure that the decisions that I'm making, I am aligning those with the goals of the business. I think to me, those are some of the things that I really love about GRC.
So you mentioned communication. Are there other soft skills or quote unquote soft skills that you think are beneficial or that someone should ensure that they have to be successful in GRC?
Yes. So apart from communication, which is really important, I would also say, so attention to detail. Having great attention to detail is very key for GRC, right? When you're assessing audits, you want to make sure that you have that keen eye to spot, corrections that need to be made, remediations, to spot where there are gaps. And I would say that's really important. I would also say having an organizational skill is also really good. So being really organized, having great time management, because sometimes like when you work in GRC, there's always like conflicting roles. Like I said, it's an intersectional role. And sometimes it feels like everybody wants a part of you. And so being really organized and being able to manage your time effectively. I mean, there's so many more skills that you could really transfer into GRC, being a good writer. So both verbal and written skills, having great presentational skills to be able to present to the board, to be able to do a lot of research. Those are really good skills to have. And that's why I think that anyone in any field could really transition into cybersecurity, especially GRC. So if you don't have a technical background, let's say you're in construction, right? As what do you do in construction, apart from just like drilling holes? I mean, there's a lot of assessment that goes into place, because you want to make sure that where you drill, you're drilling at the right spot, right? And there isn't any like fallback or cutting off, like, for example, the electrical supply. So you're assessing, right? And you're paying attention to detail. And those are important skills that can be easily transferred into GRC. If you're working as a journalist, that's communication. You could really transfer those skills to GRC. You also do a lot of research as a journalist. Nursing, you pay very good attention to detail, because you want to make sure that you're giving patients the right medication. And so there's a lot of, I do definitely believe that whatever you're doing you can definitely transfer the skills into GRC.
So let's jump over to job interviews. So for what you can share, because who knows if there's non-competes or whatever you have, but let's just are there some common questions that you've typically seen asked when you were still working in the corporate realm in job interviews? Like, are there some common questions or themes around what they're looking for in a candidate?
Well, the kind of questions that you will be asked in the interview really depends on what in GRC you're going to be doing. So just as I mentioned earlier, in GRC, you could do like risk assessments, where you're just focusing on doing like risk assessments using frameworks and standards. And so the questions around that role will definitely be different from a role that says third-party risk specialist, third-party risk analyst, or a role that says compliance analyst or auditor. So it definitely does depend. But for an entry-level role, questions like what is governance, what is risk, what is compliance? Can you tell me the difference between governance, risk, and compliance, right? And how you want to think about this is governance is what governs the company internally, the policies, the procedures. Those are the things that governance is. And then risk, you're talking about like what assessment, how can we assess the company to see like the controls that we currently have, to see what the gaps are, right? And how can we remediate those gaps? So that's risk. Compliance, we're looking at what are the regulations, right? Those federal regulations that we have to abide by. So SOC 2, ISO. So that's how you break down this tree. And it's definitely the question that you will be asked in an entry-level interview. Again, is why GRC, right? Because it's entry level. And so it's important to be assessed on why do you want to be in GRC out of all the segments in cybersecurity. And a lot of people say GRC is boring. I mean, that's not exactly true. I mean, the paperwork and also when the processes aren't automated can tend for it to appear as boring, but that's usually not the case. It's a very fun role to be in. So being able to assess why you want to be in GRC. Again, it could be things like, oh, I love communicating. I love talking about cybersecurity. I just love to, I know, I love that, to be able to collaborate with various sectors across the organization. You could be asked questions around NIST. What is NIST? Risk management framework. You could be asked how would you identify and assess risk? And Yeah, I think one of the important questions also is around how do you stay updated with what's going on in the industry? How do you stay updated with like new regulations and new standards and frameworks? So those are some of the questions that you'll be asked for entry level GRC. And then for the mid to senior level GRC, that's when we were looking at questions like, how would you measure the effectiveness of a GRC program? And so looking at the KPIs, how do you assess the effectiveness of a program? Let's say you're working on creating like a security program or a security awareness program. How do you go about measuring that? And you could also be asked questions around internal audit. So how would you approach an internal audit? Questions around how would you communicate risk to executives or the stakeholders? You could also be giving case studies. You could be giving like home assignments, and then be able to talk about those case studies. Be able to, for example, you could be given like a policy to dissect and talk about your assessments on that policy. What are your remediations? Where do you see that improvements could be made on the policy? You could be asked so many questions really as you move up in GRC. There's so many questions.
So you mentioned, like one of the questions is essentially like, how do you stay up to date on things? So do you have any resources that you would recommend, whether that's books or like websites or podcasts or whatever, like for someone out there that's kind of aspiring into these roles or currently working like in a more entry level role? Like, are there any, do you have like any go-to resources that you use?
Yes. So I read a lot of white papers and case studies, and I listen to a lot of cybersecurity podcasts. Some of my favorite podcasts are, I think it's called Cyber Inspiration. There's Darknet Diaries, which I love so much. Darknet Diaries was one of the first cybersecurity podcasts that I started listening to, and just really amazing. There's also Down the Security Rabbit Hole. There is a 31 Days to Compliance, which is more aligned to GRC. And there's several websites, news websites that you could use to stay updated on cybersecurity news, like the Bleeding Computer. There's also CIO, which is really good for someone who is in a GRC or privacy role. Yeah, I personally also have like signed up for news to come straight to my phone, so that way I stay on top of everything that's going on. But these are some resources that you could use to stay updated on what's going on in cybersecurity.
So if I'm a business owner kind of taking a look at this, like why GRC? Let's say I'm a smaller business owner. Like these are just foreign terms to me. I have no idea what GRC, even though you said what it stands for, I'm still kind of like, what does this mean? Like, so what for a business owner, like what does GRC like actually mean for their business? Like how does it actually help them?
Wow, that's a great question. So think of it this way, right? For a business owner, let's say you're building a product and your product is ready for the market, and you have your first customer come to you and say, hey, I really want your product, but can I guarantee that before I do business with you, I need to make sure that you do have security, the proper security practices in place, right? And so they were looking at what you're complying, so SOC 2, ISO, and they're asking for those reports, they're asking for those audits, and that's where GRC really comes in. It's one of the ways that GRC comes in, and so GRC would help you pursue getting those certifications to show other partners that you're doing what you say you're doing, what you say you're doing, that you're not a security risk to them, that they can be confident of doing business with you. And because we hear a lot of data breaches in the news, and companies want to make sure that, no matter how great your product is, that they're not putting themselves at risk by doing business with someone who isn't secure. So that's one way. Another way that GRC comes in is, so we see a lot of phishing, for example, right? And so where GRC comes in is that education, that awareness to the whole organization, to the executives, to those in leadership positions, to educate them and give them awareness on, look, like, this is what phishing is, right? Or this is how you can fall, and this is how to avoid falling for it. These are the things to look out for. And so really help strengthen the security posture of the organization. And I always recommend having GRC at the onset of your business, because you want to build a security culture as your business grows. Yeah. So those are definitely some of the ways that GRC does come in. GRC is so important to growing the strength of your organization. It's so important to, I do think that it's a driving force of any business, right? And what we do is enable the business, stay in business, and continue to do what they love. And especially in this crazy climate that we're currently living in, where we just don't know what to expect tomorrow. We don't know what new attack vector is going to be out. And so having GRC in your organization, having those policies, the procedures to follow, protecting, making sure that your technology is secure, the processes are secure, the people, they are aware, they're educated, right? So GRC is very, very important to any organization, especially small businesses. I know some people think that, attackers go for the big box, but I mean, they also go for the small box, and sometimes getting the small box is easier. And so you want to be very proactive about protecting your business, protecting your resources, and not letting it go to waste.
So any additional advice you would have for the job seeker out there around GRC?
Yes, I would definitely say to reach out a lot and get a lot of help. And they say a closed mouth is not fed, right? So really reach out to a lot of people, have a plan for your career, even when you do land a job. So let's say you just landed a job. Awesome. Like, have a plan. Now you have a job. Like, what are you going to do? Say, what do you want to be? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? Where do you want to be 2 years from now? And I always say to have this like overall plan, and then break that plan down. Like, create a roadmap on how you're going to get there, right? So I always say that if you want to be something tomorrow, what are you doing today to get there? So you landed your job, right? The first 90 days on the job is very crucial. Those are very crucial times. So what are you going to do in those first 90 days to really set yourself apart, right? To set you up for promotions, to set you up as just, I don't know, someone who is just like motivated, and that could really define the rest of your time in the company. Yeah, and I know some people say, well, plans can change, but having a direction also always helps. Another thing I would say is having a mentor, having a cybersecurity mentor, someone to bounce ideas with, someone who can help you plan your career path, and someone who can provide you advice and counseling, support. You also want to start thinking about, okay, having sponsors, people who are going to mention your name in rooms where you're not there. those are really important in your career path. Very, very important. And one of the things that I did that really helped me was having a support group. So I had a support group and we met every quarter and we just talked about what was going on and, what our plans are. And that was really good. If you can have like a small support group that you go to like brainstorm, to discuss challenges and to get support, that's also really helpful. So those are some of the advice that I would say can be really helpful and can make a difference, because not everyone does it. And so when you do it, you can really set yourself apart and you could change just where your career takes you. I feel like a lot of people are often discouraged, and cybersecurity isn't an easy field to get into, especially for when you're first getting in as intro level. And I just don't want people to feel discouraged. Like, don't feel discouraged, just keep going, right? And I always remind myself, you know what they say, the guy who made the light bulb was at the 10,000 times, right? The 10,000th time that the light bulb it worked. So imagine if he had given up at the 9,009,000 times, it would have never gotten there. And you just have to keep going. Don't give up. I see a lot of talk around how you can't get in if you don't have experience. And some people give up, but don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Like, people that get it are people who will never give up. People that get it, people that never, don't forget that. A lot of people that you see that are successful today, it didn't happen overnight, right? It didn't happen overnight. If you had a chance to sit with them and listen to their story of how they made it, you would see that, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work. It may look like just this glamorous thing that you see, but there's a lot of work behind it. So don't ever give up. Always reach out for help. If someone just doesn't have the time right now to help you, reach out to somebody else. Like, don't lose hope, right? Reach out to somebody else. There's so much kindness in the world. There's so many people who want to help. So don't give up. Keep pushing, keep going. And if you're trying something and it's not working, then you have to change the way that you're doing it, right? It's not you, it's the way that you're doing it. Don't put it on yourself. Don't put it on yourself. I know it's something that we do so often, and it's just a human thing where we try to think that it's us, and it may be sometimes, but sometimes it's not. It's not really you. Like, it's the system, is the process. And if you change that, you see that there's going to be improvement. So for example, one example I would give is when I first started looking for a job in cybersecurity, I wasn't getting any offers. I wasn't getting any interviews even. Let's not even talk about offers, right? I wasn't getting any interviews to start with. And guess what? All it took was for me to one call where I spoke with someone and they were so helpful. And you know what they said? They said, you need to change your resume. Like, I had the right information on my resume, but it wasn't visually, like, the presentation was just wrong. And you want to make it easy for people to find what they're looking for. And the templates, like the resume templates that you can use to pull those information, organize that information that you have. I don't know a lot of people that say, I know there may be a lot of people actually that are in the same boat. They aren't getting any interview calls, and it just may be your resume, because that's the only thing that the person is seeing right now. They don't know anything about you except what they see. And if that isn't presented very well, you may not be getting those interview calls. And reach out to me, reach out to me. I have my calendar on my LinkedIn. Just book a time slot. Let's talk. I will be more than happy to look at your resume, your LinkedIn, see, what we can do to at least get you those interviews, and then look at how we could get better at interviewing, how we could answer those questions better. And yeah, it's work, but it can be done. And don't forget that, there's so much joy, and you tend to cherish something when you work hard for it, right? So strive, don't give up, reach out for help, and just keep going and believe that you can do it. I feel like that's the most important thing, is believing in yourself that you can do it. Believe that you can do it.